Hello, welcome everyone to part 2 of effective sampling. So part 1 was all about how you create your list of 100 people, you start ranking them and start sharing the oils with them and different phrases you might say, and how to do that effectively to make sure that everybody, if possible, before they come to a class has had a positive experience. So I'm now going to share the screen with you again and continue on from where we left off. Okay, here we go. Oh. So we're now going to go into a little bit more of the detail of how you can make up these samples and looking these essential oil, different types of essential oils up in your book. So first of all, you need to know, before you can obviously start sharing these oils, is you need to be confident of how to look up an element with the resources you have. So you'll probably have the Modern Essentials app on your phone, so you can go in there and look up elements, and that's a really easy way of looking up elements. You also will probably have one of these books, so the Essential Life book or the Modern Essentials book. So I'm now just going to kind of really quickly take you through how to look up an element in these books. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but actually there are some things I just want to talk you through as well. So in the intro section, obviously that covers all the kind of things, what is an essential oil? But in the kind of last section of this book, you will see here, for example, you've got all the elements. In the red section of the book, you can see it in the side bit here, it's coloured in red, and you can look up any element you want really alphabetically. Most elements are in here. If you do have a real specific element and it's not in the book, then just go onto Google and type in doTERRA and type that element in. And what you'll find is, because there are so many people now using these oils, you will find some information on that element and usually a couple of different testimonials that you can look at. But most elements you're going to come across, and certainly the ones that you're going to be wanting to give samples for, are going to be in the books and the app as well. So you'll have plenty of resources to look these up. So I just want to give you a couple of examples. So let's have a look. Let's look up heartburn. Heartburn is quite a common one. So let's see if I can get into the right place here for you. So heartburn, I don't know, you can see that there. So on heartburn, you can see there they've listed the oils, say lemon, peppermint and digestive blend. Now, first of all, I just want to address that in this book, there will not be any of the blends that doTERRA have named by the names that you see them. So for example, Zengest is actually digestive blend. So you'll see it on your oils that you have. So if you look at your Zengest, you'll also see that it has digestive blend written on it as well. And that's because they have to make this book more general and they can't just put the specific doTERRA blends in here. But if you're unsure of a blend, and if you have a look in here and you see a name that you don't recognise, then again, just go onto Google and type doTERRA digestive blend, and it will come up and tell you what the oil is actually called. So it will say Zengest. So you can easily find out that answer. Now you'll see when you look up elements, and this is actually quite a rare one that only has 3 recommended oils. Often you'll have lots of oils recommended. Now it doesn't mean you need to use all of these essential oils for that particular element. In fact, most times you only need to use one of them. And really it's just showing you, as I think I mentioned before in part 1, that when it comes to the essential oils, there's not just one answer. So with every element you look up, there's usually quite a few different oils that will do the same thing. And depending on what your chemistry is like, will just depend on the oil that might be best for you. However, I'm going to look up another one quickly, actually, first of all. Let's have a look at, what have we got here? Wounds. That's quite a good one because that can sometimes come up. So wounds here, you can see, if you look up wounds, you'll see there's tons, there's quite a few. There's more than 10 essential oils there that are listed. And hopefully you can see there's a traffic light system. So if you have the Modern Essentials book, the ones that are in red are the ones that are most commonly effective on most people. And the ones in amber are the next kind of ones, and then green are the ones that are still effective, but perhaps not as effective as the ones that are in red. So most times you'll find that in the red section, so the oils that are mostly recommended, there'll be one of the oils in your starter kit. So in that first kit that you purchased. So that is the oil you want to start using yourself first of all, if it's the ailment for you. Or if you're going to sample, that's the one you want to use to sample with someone. Obviously, you start with the oil you've got and you just go from there. So for example, in the wounds, the second one listed here is Melaleuca, which you have in your kit. And now underneath, it will tell you specific ways of how to use those particular oils for that ailment. If it doesn't, you just use the general rule, which is using 1 to 2 drops of an essential oil and putting it on whatever you're using it for, and repeating again every 2 hours as needed. So that's kind of the general rule. And as the oils are listed in this ailment section, there'll also be a little sign, whether it's a hand, and that means topical obviously, or a drink, and that means internal. So it tells you how to take them. So it's quite straightforward. Now on other things, they might give you some specific instructions of how to use them. And then you'd follow that rather than going with the general way of using it. One of the examples here is with heartburn. So going back to the heartburn one here, where it lists some oils that you can use. Underneath it gives you a blend, and it tells you to use 2 drops of lemon, 2 drops of peppermint in 1 tablespoon of fractionated coconut oil, and apply it to your breastbone in a clockwise motion. So some things are very specific, and then underneath it says also the digestive blend can be used, and to just apply 1 to 2 drops diluted as recommended on the chest. So these are just, very good guidelines for how to use the essential oils. But again, if they don't give you specific guidelines, then just go with that general rule of 1 to 2 drops every 2 hours as needed, and just look for the symbol to see whether you would recommend taking it internally or topically. And sometimes they have 2 symbols, because you can take it topically or internally. And so again, when you're giving the sample, I generally suggest to people they start with the topical application, and then if that doesn't work, then they can try it internally. So that's kind of what you're looking to be able to do when you're giving samples. Now the other book, I'll just quickly show you this one as well. It's the Essential Life book. Again, the intro is great. You can look up the intro and just remind yourself of how to use essential oils. But in the middle section here, well, not the middle section, but near the beginning, you have a summary. So it's a bit different to the other book, where you can look up just a summary really of ailments and a quick reference to see what essential oils are recommended. So on this page, let's have a look at something that might come up when you're doing your sampling. A good thing to sample. Okay, infant reflux is on this page. So you've got the infant reflux over there. I'm not sure if I'm pointing to the right place, but I hope I am. But you'll see there's just a couple of oils there that are recommended, and it has a symbol there so you know whether to take it topically or internally. And no specific instructions on this page. It's just a very simple thing. So, if you couldn't find any more detail, then again, you would just use that general rule, which is 1 to 2 drops as and when needed every 2 hours on the area where it is, if it's saying topical, or internally in some water. But actually in this book, it then gives you another reference. So if you just follow along where it says infant reflux, it says turn to page 225. So I'm just going to do that now. And it has a whole section on children's health. So here you can look up children's health. It kind of gives a little summary. And then on the following page, it has a very detailed section where it lists tons and tons of ailments that are specific to children, and gives you more of a detailed description of how to use the essential oils for that. So that's really good. And then I'm going to show you one more resource. I'm going to just stop sharing this screen, so I'm going to share another screen with you. Okay, so this is something that hopefully your upline has sent to you, which is the Everything Essentials link. Now this used to be available on the website, on the World Web. It was public and people could add their testimonials to it. But then it was taken down for various political reasons, because doTERRA couldn't be seen to be linking ailments publicly to essential oils for various reasons. But we found the archived version, and so here it is, and you'll be sent it hopefully. It's just really helpful, so you can again Scroll down, it lists all the ailments you can possibly have, pretty much most things. And so again, if someone comes to you and says they want a sample for acne, let's do that one. You just click on acne. It's quite slow, it's been quite slow tonight. And then go to suggested protocols. And again, like in the book, it lists more than one oil, but again, you don't have to use every single oil. It's usually just one, unless otherwise specified. And go along the top here and find one that you have, or frankincense you have in your kit, but it's not the best one to sample because it's expensive for you and also for them. So here we go, we've got lavender and melaleuca. Okay, so they're really good ones to use. And if you go down here, it gives you some instructions of how to use it. Adding it to fractionated coconut oil. So this is something as well, when you're giving a sample to someone, I actually often, if it's on here, I'll send the link to them so they can see it themselves, and that gives them more confidence to use that essential oil sample. So I'm going to stop sharing that again and go back to the PowerPoint. Oops, no, that's not it. Oh, yes, it is, yes. So you need to be confident of looking up ailments, and you get confident really just by doing it. I've just given you a summary of how to look it up, and it's the same for the app on your phone. You can see the ailment and it gives you instructions on how to use it. So that's why we say to really just use the oils as much as you can. I used to get quite excited at the beginning when I first started doing the business, and someone in my family had an ailment. I was like, yes, because I could sample them and test another one out. And that's, it's all just good practice. So the more you sample, again, the more used to looking up the oils you'll get, and you'll start to find the ones that work as well, really well on most people, just by kind of trial and error as well a little bit. So you need to be able to do that. Okay, what's the next thing? Okay, so you need to know all these things, which we kind of covered in part 1 as well. And these can be found on your live document. But you can also look up the resources down in that are listed here as well. Okay, other things you definitely need to know a little bit about are the safety tips. So the essential oils are very safe, and they don't have very many side effects at all. In fact, hardly at all. Someone might have a slight reaction to one if they're very sensitive, as in a little rash. That's usually the worst it gets. So it's just, they are very safe, so please don't be scared of them. But you do need to know these key things. So you need to tell people to be careful of their eyes, try not to get them in their eyes, and if they do, to not wash it out with water, because that will make it worse. So just, just tell people that, especially if you are giving them oregano, which is known as a hot oil, because it feels hot on the skin. So it's not actually going to do any real damage, permanent damage, but it will feel hot, and it will feel like it's burning if, it's on real sensitive skin. So just to be aware, make people aware of that. If you were to sample citrus oils, which isn't really that common, you wouldn't really sample citrus oils very much, but just to, if you were, to make people aware that if they put them on their face, to not go out in the sunshine, because it makes you more photosensitive for 12 hours after applying. And I also do recommend, mainly, unless it's just lavender, something really mild, I say to just test that sample on the bottom of the feet, first of all, just to make sure there's no reaction. And what I mean by reaction is just a little skin kind of reaction, just a bit of redness perhaps. If someone does have that reaction, they know they definitely need to use that oil with a carrier oil, and just to be careful. So the things you need to be able to sample are your oils, obviously. So you'll have your kit probably by now, so you'll be ready to go. And you need to have a book or at least an app, so some way of looking up the oils. But of course, you do have the online things that are free as well, like that Everything Essential site I just showed you, and just Googling. But I do recommend having a book. It's good to have a book, and especially when you come to do your classes anyway. Now, these little A to Z booklets at the bottom, these guides, are very good. They kind of rotate them, since they might have a slightly updated one now on essential oil supplies. But they are just, there'll be little booklets that you can look up the ailments in a very simple way, very simplistic. So you, as someone who's doing the business, you wouldn't want to rely on this to look up ailments to give people, but It's good for when you're sampling, so people can just flick through and get a good idea of what they might want to sample for if they're choosing their own sample. Coconut oil is something you want to have because you might want to dilute a sample before giving it to someone, especially if it's, you know, giving it for a baby or a young child. Most times though, I'll just instruct them to use their own carrier oil with it, just to put some on first. Your sampling bottles. So these are called sampling vials. You can get them from your back office if you just type in vials, V-I-A-L-S, and they'll come up, and you can get 72 for about £12.50. You can also get them from essential oil supplies or Essent oils as well. But this is literally what you're going to use to sample people with. And I'll show you in a second how that works. And then your stickers, which you get in your welcome pack. And you may want to get some little bags. I bought some lavender bags from Amazon. They're really cheap. So that's just a nice way of giving your sample. And so here you go. I've mentioned this website quite a few times. This is the main one we use, essentialoilsupplies.co.uk. So here's some ideas of what you might want to sample. And as I've mentioned, I think quite a few times now, is the main kind of purpose of giving a sample to somebody is for them to have an experience to give them a belief in these oils. So if someone was to come to you and say, yes, I'd love a sample for fibromyalgia, that would not be the best thing to sample, because obviously that's not going to give them a quick response. They're not going to see a dramatic difference with their little tiny sample bottle. That's a very chronic condition, like IBS as well, severe deep pains, perhaps they've had them for years, or what other things are not good to sample? Mood things, so depression, things like that. They're not very black and white. So you really want to find something that's quite acute, and something that they're really going to see a reaction with just a small sample. And there's quite a few things that fall into that category. And here's just some ideas. So lots of people have headaches. Peppermint is a great one to do for headaches. And you can look it up in the book. It will say peppermint, and also sometimes lavender as well. So you can try peppermint first of all, and if that doesn't work, you can add some lavender into it. And often it's the combination of peppermint and lavender. And the best way to do for headaches is to, put 3 to 6 drops of these sample bottles, which is the same as 1 to 2 drops from the big bottle. So you just tell them to put 3 to 6 drops on their temples here and see how they feel. And they might need to reapply it after 20 minutes. Or if they've got a tension headache, like I get sometimes, you put it at the back of your neck here, or even across the forehead here is a good place. Congestion's great. So they've got a cold. Peppermint's really good for congestion. So you can put some carrier oil here and then get them to put a drop of peppermint, here by their nose where it's congested, or just putting 3 to 6 drops on their hands and breathing it in as well. Or if they've got a tight chest, on their chest as well. So that's a good one. Hay fever, of course, that's really good. And on the Everything Essentials site, actually, under allergies, it tells you exactly what to do for hay fever. So it tells you to put, I think it's 2 drops each of lavender and lemon, and then 2 to 5 drops of peppermint, depending on how severe the hay fever is. And it will tell you for mild hay fever, just to put 3 to 6 drops in the hand and just breathe it in. And for more severe hay fever, to do the same, put 3 to 6 drops, but in some water and to drink it. And I've sampled hay fever a lot. It really depends on the severity of the hay fever, but some people might just need to take it once in a day, but usually people need to take it throughout the day. So if they're going to work, I say to, put some drops into your big glass of water and just continually sip it throughout the day. That's one thing they could do, or do it kind of every 2 hours as needed. So that's good. You could also get some Tri-Ease soft gels, which actually contain the lemon, lavender and peppermint already in a lovely soft gel form to make it easy. And you could give them, maybe 5 or 6 of those to test. That's another thing you could do to sample that one. It's also good for allergies. So if someone has an allergic reaction or cat allergy or something like that, you could give it for them. I guess it's not so easy to predict they're going to come across that, so it's not one I generally sample, but it is good for any type of allergies, that blend. Lavender, great for sleep. So you can give some lavender, and then you know, some people take it internally in some water even, but most people want to put 3 to 6 drops on their feet about 20 minutes before going to bed, and then I tell them to put the residue on their wrists so they can actually smell it as well. That's really helped many people's sleep. I've even had people with severe insomnia have a really good night's sleep with doTERRA's lavender. So that's an important one. And when people sleep, they're really happy. So if you can fix that sleep problem, you'll have a very happy prospective client that would love to come to your class and learn more. Insect bites, obviously these are a bit more spontaneous, but if they were going camping, you could perhaps give them some lavender in case they got bitten or going to get stung by wasps, perhaps, if you can predict that one. It's a bit hard to predict, but like nettle stings, things like that. Also rashes. So if anyone has a rash, then lavender is really good for that as well, and just to put on the rash. Or cut. So lavender is definitely one that's good to have with you in your handbag or man bag, whatever. And if you're out and about and people, you know, children get cut, it's a very mild one to put on cuts to help heal the cut and stop it getting infected as well. But with wasp stings, you know, I had my friend who was doing the business, and she sampled someone with that because her next door neighbour got a wasp sting, and she put the lavender on it, and pretty much within seconds they saw the sting come right down. It was quite a bad sting. So it's really fast acting for things like that. And of course burns, but that's harder to predict as well. Eczema is quite a common one to sample. So again, you can look this up on Everything Essentials or in the books, but the two that are really good that you'll have in your kit are lavender and melaleuca. So I do equal amounts of both. So fill your sample bottle with equal amounts of both, and then I get them to, you know, put a carrier oil on first and just add 3 to 6 drops of the blend onto the eczema, onto a test patch. Now, sometimes I have had it where it hasn't been that effective, and so at some point you might want to get geranium, because that's one you would want to add in, and geranium's very good for the skin. It's very healing, and pretty much every time then, I can't think of a time when that hasn't worked, when I've added lavender, tea tree, some melaleuca and geranium together for eczema. Ear infections. This is a really fast acting one. So if someone has an ear infection, you can use lavender and melaleuca. Again, 3 to 6 drops of each. You can either put it just here, tell them to put it here and around the back of their ear, or to get some cotton wool and to put it onto the cotton wool and then put that inside the ear. So you don't actually pour the oils down the ear. That's one of the places you mustn't put essential oils, but you can put on the cotton bud and put that into the ear. And that really worked really well with sienna. Now, basil might be one you want to get as well, because if that doesn't work really effectively, basil is incredible for ear infections. So that's one you might want to add in to that as well. Okay, what else do we have? Zengest. Okay, that's a great one to sample people. Really, really good, because it does so many things. And on most people, it will work really well. So it's one of those oils you can kind of rely on it working on pretty much most people. So things like heartburn, acid reflux. I think heartburn was the one we looked up in the book, didn't we? So it kind of tells you just to put a couple of drops or 3 to 6 drops of a sample bottle onto the chest area with some carrier oil. Or you can drink it in some water. Any digestive issues at all, so constipation. Constipation can be quite a tricky one. You have to be, if it's severe constipation, you have to be quite consistent with it, I found. And sometimes even putting it on like every half an hour for like a 3-hour period is what you'd want to do to help with that. And then travel sickness as well. That's a good one to take for that, and to put it on before you go on the boat or the plane or whatever. And then also you can reapply it when you're on the transport that's making you sick. Also good for colic. So in babies, really good. You can kind of rub it onto the digestive system. Or my friend actually put a bit of digestin on her, Zengest it's called, sorry now, onto her finger with a bit of carrot oil and got her baby to suck it. So that was really effective for her. So there's many things you can use Zengest for. Oregano, as I said, is a hot oil, so you need to be really careful when sampling this one. You can put it on warts and verrucas. Then I have put that on here, but it's not actually the best thing to probably sample somebody. If you were desperate, that's the only thing they had, maybe you would give them that. But I would definitely tell them that, you know, depending on the wart or verruca, and I don't really know why, but some people will go after a couple of days. So really quick, just by applying the oregano, you know, 3 or 4 times in the day onto the actual wart or verruca. But other people's can take up to 3 months to go. So it really does depend on the type of wart or verruca, so perhaps not the best thing to sample. Molluscum. Now, that's something that I came across when I first started doing doTERRA. I'd never heard of it, but suddenly all the mums at my school had children that were suffering with this molluscum. And what it is a virus that's very contagious, and they're these raised, kind of transparent, not warts, but kind of not skin tags either, it's hard to, moles, I think that's the best way of describing it. And children can be covered in these, and the doctors have nothing that they can do for it, and they can last up to a year, and then they'll suddenly just go. But with oregano, I just gave a sample to oregano to the mums, and it would go within 2 weeks. I think the longest one was 6 weeks. So you might have to give them another sample, but at least with one sample, they'll see them start to go. They will start clearing up really very quickly. So it's very effective for that. Breathe is a very good blend to also sample, and it's good for respiratory conditions. So sinusitis, like the peppermint, then you could put it with some carrier oil on first, then a drop of Breathe here. It's strong, so definitely with carrier oil and not close to the eyes. Or just breathing it in, getting them to breathe 3 to 6 drops from their hands, breathing it in. And again on the chest as well, to kind of open everything up if they're having breathing conditions. It's also good for panic attacks as well. So anything to release tension in the chest. Now coughs are sometimes things I would say to almost stay away from, because depending on the cough, it's very hard to kind of know what to give them. And coughs can really be something that can last a very long time, and a 1 little sample bottle might not get rid of it. But chesty coughs can often be helped with the Breathe. So it does depend, and again, if that's the only thing somebody has, you might want to give it a go. Melaleuca, so the tea tree, great for skin conditions. So if someone's got acne, that's really good, and we looked up acne, didn't we? Or dandruff, or athlete's foot. You can put a drop in some carrier oil and kind of massage into the feet. Or nits as well. It's really good at killing nits and preventing nits as well. Putting it into the shampoo, you know, 3 to 6 drops in the shampoo, that kind of thing. Deep blue. So you've got the deep blue rub and the deep blue oil. So if you haven't got the deep blue rub sachets, then I do recommend you get some of those. So you can get the deep blue rub in a big tube. You can get 10 sachets, I think, for £5. I think it's 50 pence a sachet. So it's not bad. And in each one of those sachets, there's about 3 applications worth of the deep blue rub. You literally only need a pea-size amount. So when you're telling people to use it, tell them to just put a pea-size amount directly onto the area of pain. So it could be for arthritic pain, for joint pain, back pain. What else? Carpal tunnel pain, growing pains in children. It's really good for, and just put it onto that area. And it is one of those things you might need to apply every 20 minutes for a small amount of time rather than waiting 2 hours. So again, they've just got to go with how they feel. And it's also good for kind of neck tension. So if someone doesn't have anything else, then yeah, use it for them for some neck or shoulder tension. Now the deep blue oil, you would want to use for things like migraines. Now again, migraines is a slightly tricky one and something I'd perhaps stay away from. But if, you know, that is really the only thing you can sample, they haven't got anything else, then you might want to give it a go. But migraines can be caused by many different things, so it's just quite complex. but many people do find the deep blue oil is very effective with migraines, especially if you catch them early enough. And again, you just put the deep blue oil here on the temples or on the back of the neck, or even across the forehead here. And the frankincense, actually you'd put here on the top of your mouth. So that's quite a generous sample because it's very expensive. Both those oils are very expensive. But if you really can't find anything else, then, you know, you might want to do that. Other things, just something that aren't on here, hot flushes. I've sampled people with hot flushes. So peppermint is very cooling. So if you've got women going through the menopause, then that's a nice one to give. And they can just rub it into the back of their neck. Is probably the best way. Or they could actually make up their own little spray bottle if they wanted to. But most people just want to rub it in the back of the neck or the temples here to help with hot flushes. Mouth ulcers as well. We had quite a few people sampling mouth ulcers. And if you look it up, it will usually say protective blends, On Guard, even lavender, and frankincense is very good for mouth ulcers, and just putting them directly on. Cold sores are also very good. So cold sores, Melaleuca is great, and also the protective blend, which is On Guard, which is in your starter kit. I know lemongrass is also very good for cold sores, but it's not in your kit, so you want to try and keep to the ones in your kit, really. And then, of course, you've got nappy rash, which would be lavender, maybe a bit of tea tree in there as well. Or what else? Toothache. Toothache is really good. So if someone has a toothache, you want to give them some On Guard, and they can put that onto their teeth, again, every kind of 2 hours, as and when needed. Another thing you can do is if someone's just got a cold, or just getting a cold, feeling a bit run down, then you could give them some On Guard and perhaps even some oregano. If they're really brave, they can take that internally, but generally you don't want to give them that as their first essential oil experience because it's quite hot when you're taking it internally and you definitely feel you're alive. But the On Guard is quite a good one because they can really feel that working, especially at the very beginning of getting something. So if they're feeling their glands are up or they've got a bit of a sore throat coming on, then putting 3 to 6 drops of the On Guard into some water or some honey, or some coconut oil, you can just tell them to do that and gargle it if they can and swallow it, or just putting the On Guard on topically. They could try that first of all. So hopefully that's given you some good ideas of what you can sample with people when you're wanting to sample something. Excuse me. And there are many other things I haven't mentioned, and really you'll just come across them as you start speaking to people. But the key thing to really look out for is just need to ask yourself, is this something where they can get an experience just using 10 drops of an essential oil? Because that's how much you're going to put in here. It's about 10 to 12 drops of your essential oils. That's going to be, if you're going to use 2 drops, it's going to be 6 applications, 5 to 6 applications worth. So it's not tons. And the reason being is you don't want to give them lots. They don't want to come to a class and learn more and purchase some, but you want to give them enough so they have an experience. So, like I said, if they do say something more serious or a mood one, then that's when it's really handy to have your A to Z guides. They can flick through and you can say, well, you know, is there anything else? Can you look at some other things? I really want to give you a sample where you can actually really have an experience. And people get that when you tell them that, and they, you know, they're on board because they want to see it work as well. So you can kind of explain that to them. Or just start suggesting things like, you know, does anyone in your family suffer from asthma, from heartburn, from digestive issues, from headaches? And usually you don't have to say too many ailments before you find one that somebody's got that they know. So how do you sample them? What do you then do when they've said they want to sample? So you get your sample bottle, and obviously you just put 10 to 12 drops. So just hold the bottle over the sample bottle. If you take your sample bottle out, you can see there's a nice big hole in the top. So you can just literally drop the oil into there, just 10 to 12 drops of the oil. And then the little sample bottles come with these little stoppers. These little stoppers here. So you just push the stopper into the sample bottle, And there you go, put the lid on, and then you get your sticker. So in your welcome pack, you'll have some wonderful stickers where all the oils are listed, and you also have some white stickers, which I think I've run out of on this one, but just plain white stickers. So for things like hay fever or eczema, you can write on the top what they are. And so you just put them in there, and then you can put them into your little bag, and then get your handout that your upline would have sent you as well. And feel free to make it look prettier and do your own version of it. But generally the handout just has a bit of the safety, but also some place where you can write some specific instructions. And you can also tell them the instructions as well. I sometimes used to email them instructions. So it doesn't matter which way you do it, as long as they have those instructions. But if it's a bit more complicated, you might want to do something more than just tell them. Okay, sometimes you can just tell them, but it's quite good to have something written down. And like I said, it's quite nice to maybe send them a link as well, if you want to. You don't have to every time. Also, yes, that's a good tip. Just let them know to tap the bottles, because I've given samples and they said, I can't get any out. And it is quite tricky, so make sure you kind of test it yourself first of all before you give your samples. It's quite hard to get the oil out. So with these ones, it comes out quite quickly, doesn't it? But with these, you have to kind of tap them. And again, make sure they know to have 3 to 6 drops and not 1 to 2. Now, you need to take their contact details. So I've said here, a sample doesn't count unless you take their contact details. And that is so, so true. Don't expect people to come back to you. Even if they've had a really good experience, it's amazing how I've rung people up sometimes and, you know, asked them about their experience. And like, oh, yes, yeah, it was amazing. It took my headache away instantly. And you'd perhaps seen them the day before and they hadn't mentioned it. People just don't, you know, it slips their mind or whatever, but they just don't come forward. So don't expect them to take your contact details and to actually contact you. It's up to you to take their contact details and then you can contact them. And I suggest from the very beginning you start some kind of recording system. You can do it on paper, although it will very quickly grow quite big and will be hard to manage just on paper. So I would create an Excel spreadsheet. That's what I did, just a very simple spreadsheet, and you can decide what goes on there. But I'd recommend having, you know, obviously at least their name, contact details, so an email, a telephone number. I found it quite useful to put down the ailment they had and what sample I'd given them. It's just nice for me to follow that system. And then when I'd followed up with them and if I'd invited them to a class and then the class date they came to, so I kind of take them all the way through to the end, really, on that Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so these are things that I'd suggest, as I said, when you're giving the sample to somebody, they just have some brief instructions and some safety with it. And these are on the the sampling handout that your upline would have provided for you anyway. And so this is carrying on. So we've kind of mentioned this already. So then give specific instructions for how they can use their particular ailment for them. And I just want to address some of the sampling fears that I think most people feel at some point. So I've heard this quite a lot. You know, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want people to feel like I'm stalking them. So don't. Absolutely don't. There's absolutely no need to do that with these essential oils. Like I've said a number of times now, you've got such a wonderful gift here. It's amazing. And people just don't know what they don't know. So our job is to enlighten people, but not to force it on them. And some people just aren't ready to learn about essential oils. And that's fine. Just move on. You'll soon get them, you know, as they see people around them getting interested and having experiences, then they might not come around to it. And it might not be for a couple of years that they come around to it. So please don't force the essential oils on anybody, but just share openly, share confidently. You know, you've got this wonderful gift and you want to help people, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So as long as you share in a genuine way, and that's where the real integrity comes, where you believe in the oils yourself. So you've had that experience. So, you know, people often say they feel uncomfortable sharing with their friends at the beginning. They don't want to use their friends to, you know, make money from their friends. And look at it another way, you know, Obviously, your friends are the people you care about the most, your friends and family. You want to help them. You want them to get the vision of essential oils. So yeah, you don't want to just flog products to them, but you want to educate them. And, you know, doTERRA's marketing system is the fact that that's how they're selling their products. So that's the way your friends can get them. So they might as well get them from you and not from somebody else. And they'd want to get them from you. So again, as long as you're doing it genuine and from the kind of point of view that you want to help them, they'll feel that and they won't feel like you're just trying to flog a product to them. Okay, what else did I have here? Aha, yes. So I'm sure this will come up if it hasn't come up with you already. You know, these essential oils are expensive. They are expensive. They're more expensive than your essential oils you're going to get from most other places. And I certainly used to find this quite an issue. Now I don't. I can obviously see the point that they are more expensive than the other oils out there, but they really are a different product, the other essential oils as well. They're not the same product. These are medicinal grade essential oils. They actually do something, as in they do something really quite amazing and help your body heal from so many different things. Whereas other essential oils will help a little bit, but not to the same extent. So these really are, you know, value for money. You're paying for the quality here. And just to kind of emphasize this point, you know, a headache can be gone, not every time, you might need to use a couple of drops, but it can be gone with just using 1 drop of peppermint, which is about 7 pence. You know, so even, I know paracetamols aren't very expensive, but the mere fact you have to drive to the shops to get them, that inconvenience, and then the fact that you get the side effects of medications, you know, 7 pence, that isn't very much to get rid of your headache. And then, of course, you've got that peppermint that you can not only use for headaches, but you can use it to wake you up, you can use it to help you focus, you can use it for tension, you can use it for fevers, on children, on yourselves, to cool you down. You know, you can use it for joint pain, indigestion. So there's an array of things you can use just peppermint for. And also partner that with the fact that peppermint has no expiration date. So as long as you keep it in a place that's not in direct sunlight and not on top of a radiator, so in a relatively cool, dark place, this peppermint will last forever. And you only ever need 1 drop of it, generally 1 to 2 drops maximum, so it will last a long time. So when you look at it in all that way, so it actually gets rid of your headache in a safe and effective way, and with all those other pluses that I've just explained, it's not actually very expensive. And again, 1 drop of basil for an ear infection. You know, I know people with severe ear infections that have to go on antibiotics for like 7 to 14 days just for having an ear infection. Never mind the side effects you get from antibiotics and all those, you know, that chemicals that are going into your body and children's bodies, which is not very nice to think about. But also, again, having to go to the doctors and get that prescription. You know, that takes time and money. And so for just 6 pence, you can get rid of an ear infection with just 1 application again. And yes, of course, sometimes it takes 2 applications, but these aren't expensive when you take it down to that level. And of course, we're human, so we are afraid of rejection. That's not a nice feeling. But again, we don't need to be, because, you know, they're rejecting the oils, they're not rejecting us. And if we believe, you know, we've had that experience, we know they work, we genuinely believe they work, we want to share them with others. If they're not ready for wanting to use the essential oils, then that's fine, that's absolutely their choice. But it's also good to remember that it takes 5 to 8 exposures before somebody buys. So sometimes, you know, you need to drop seeds in for about a year before someone's even willing to open their mind to using essential oils. So, you know, please try not to take it personally and just share these oils, you know, with confidence, like I said, and the people that are open to it will be the ones that will come forward first, and they'll start enjoying the oils. And then you will find that it will start to kind of spread that way very naturally as well. So be bold, be brave, and, you know, realize what you have, this amazing gift of essential oils, and share it with everybody. And you will find tons and tons of people that are ready to hear about the essential oils and that will really appreciate them, especially at the moment where England is pretty much untouched and there are so many people that don't even know about doTERRA and certainly don't know about the healing properties of essential oils. So there's so much opportunity out there. Okay, well, so hopefully now you feel confident in how to look up an ailment, how to select which oil to use, and what kind of instructions to give someone with a sample, how to make a sample, and what types of things are good to sample as well. And of course, work with your upline in your weekly calls or your daily calls that you're having with them. They're there to help support you along this kind of sampling journey and to help you, with any questions you might have as they come up, because they do definitely at the beginning. So the homework after this training is to prepare at least 20 samples of the common ailments, the ones I've kind of talked about today, so that you have them at the ready. And actually something I didn't mention is quite good to have is the little keyring that doTERRA do. It's a tiny keyring that have 10 sample vials in them which are empty. So you can fill up, your most common samples, 10 of your most common samples, have them with you at all times, so you're ready to kind of give it to people as and when it happens. Just makes it so much easier, and you can just keep replacing them. If you haven't already, set your 4 classes ready for while you're sampling, because the thing you don't want to happen is to be giving people great experiences and then having to come back to them with class dates. Again, that doesn't flow, and you probably will lose people that way. So you need to have your 4 class dates booked in, or your 2 class dates, whatever you decide to do. Would recommend 4, but if that feels too much, then you've got to do what feels best for you. So you have at least 2 classes to be able to offer people. And make sure you've invited your upline, so you've organised it with your upline. Create a sampling spreadsheet so you can start recording all this lovely sampling that you're doing, and so you don't lose track of people, and start sampling. I've said if you're going for it, so if you really want to, kick your business off to a really fast start, then I'd recommend sampling at least 2 people a day and then following up with 2 people a day. So you're always sampling 2 people and you're always following up and inviting people to classes to 2 people a day. Okay, that's the end of sampling. So that's part 2 of sampling. Enjoy your sampling experiences.